Back in November of 2021, I had the pleasure of interviewing Lisa Pieretti, the Executive Director and founding member of the International Hyperhidrosis Society. November is Hyperhidrosis Awareness Month, so we're bringing back the interview to give you a chance to get more familiar with this wonderful organization. Please be sure to visit them online at sweathelp.org to learn how you can become involved in Awareness Month activities. Hi, and welcome to Community Spotlight. I'm your host, Jen Dawson, and I am delighted to be highlighting the International Hyperhidrosis Society today. And with me is Lisa Pieretti. She is the Executive Director and one of the founding members of the organization, and they have recently partnered with PeDRA. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for inviting me. This is an honor and a pleasure.
Oh, thank you. Why don't you get us started by giving us a history of your organization and how you and your others decided to found this organization?
You bet. So, we founded the International Hyperhidrosis Society in 2003. So, that's a good 18 years ago at this time. And when we founded it, it was because hyperhidrosis was suddenly um, about to get a new viable treatment for it.
Mm.
And we realized that we, being the group of dermatologists that I work with over the years, we realized that hyperhidrosis was relatively unknown, and certainly the treatments that were being brought forward were not patient centric. And we thought, my goodness, who is going to vet all the treatments? Who's going to help clinicians define and diagnose? Like, it was there was a zero out there.
Mm.
So we thought we need to have a viable, independent organization that would not only take what was current and what was hopeful in the future, but to keep the momentum going. And
Mhm.
so that's what we've been doing for the past 18 years is every day try to keep the momentum going and keep on building because we're not at the finish line yet.
Yeah, I mean, how lovely that you have this organization that was able to step in on the cusp of things
Mhm.
changing for the condition. And now, almost 20 years in, you have accomplished so much. So, talk to me about some of the things that you've been doing to keep that momentum going.
So I feel very strongly that data is important,
Mhm.
and especially when it comes to a condition that is so stigmatized and so unknown. So I kind of didn't know this, to be honest with you. I didn't know the challenges I was stepping into. I just thought it was more of an awareness building venture. But what I quickly realized was that hyperhidrosis, which is excessive sweating beyond which is needed for thermoregulation or as a response to stress, is stigmatized because most people can control this. So, anytime there's a condition that the general population can experience but control,
Mm.
you then have people who can't control it feeling stigmatized and feeling shame because what's wrong with me? I can't control it. So we had and still do work very hard in reducing the stigma of hyperhidrosis. And the way we do that is by validating and making this condition real. How do we do that? We have data, we research it, we look at someone with hyperhidrosis and someone without hyperhidrosis and say, what's the difference in the incidence of serious skin conditions? Well, turns out it's 300% greater in hyperhidrosis patients and sufferers than it is when you don't have it. Let's look at anxiety and depression. Well, again, it's many times greater when you have hyperhidrosis. So if I'm able to justify and validate the experience of a sufferer, then I get the attention of the world. Then I get the attention of media, I get the attention of researchers, and I get the attention of clinicians.
Mhm.
So that's, I think, another area where our organizations are very closely aligned in the importance of research.
Absolutely. So, how is the society supporting research?
Well, the most recent work that we did was groundbreaking. We recently did a large nationwide survey, both quantitative and qualitative, and the effects of hyperhidrosis on our children and adolescents who have it. Now, this has never been done before, and this is an area. This is I kind of think of getting the awareness out about hyperhidrosis among our youngest sufferers is our last frontier. The reason why almost all the treatments we have for hyperhidrosis are for those 18 and older, and yet almost all hyperhidrosis starts in childhood and adolescence.
Isn't that
Right?
something?
There's the gap.
Yep.
Mind the gap. It's huge. So why do we not have? Why do kids have to suffer with it? And then the research tells us that people with hyperhidrosis will suffer with it for 10 years before they get a diagnosis and get treatment. No, and if you think about it, of course, because you have the pediatricians and the pediatric dermatologists and the GPs not even acknowledging that hyperhidrosis exists because there's no research there and there are no treatments that are on label for them. So this is where I hope to team up with you guys in for the last frontier of let's get kids the help they need that are suffering with hyperhidrosis.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so striking to hear that the average person can expect to suffer with it for 10 years before they can have access to treatment, which 5 minutes of suffering with it is long enough. I can't imagine, and I especially can't imagine being a 10-year-old kid and being told, well, we don't have any options for you.
Right. You'll grow out of it.
Heartbreaking.
They hear that all the time, that you'll grow out of it. And we have this documented in our research. You'll grow out of it, try this talcum powder, all kinds of home remedies, just put a fan. So just to let your audience know what hyperhidrosis kind of looks like and how it manifests and presents. So kids will have the palmar plantar hyperhidrosis starts at the youngest years. So that's hands and feet. And it appears to have a genetic component where the two occur together. So the kids will have soaking sweat in their shoes and not be able to, play tennis and play lots of sports. And because they have to wear these special shoes and they're slipping and sliding in them. And then, And then as you can imagine, that when the sweat is occluded in their feet, all of the secondary infections that they get. And it's tough.
Yeah.
And then on their hands, you think like how much we use our hands and kids as well, right?
Yeah.
And children don't have an option. They have to use their hands for their schoolwork and they have to hand in tests and homework. That's all soggy. And lots of kids are sent home for it. And of course they're bullied and yeah. So if we can interrupt that trajectory. And so here at the International Hyperhidrosis Society, one point that we make very distinct is that there's a difference between patients and sufferers, because so many in our community are sufferers for such a long time. It's an important distinction. So most of the kids are sufferers. And then when they become adults, then probably about half become patients and they are finally on somewhat of a treatment regimen, although most of them are still unhappy with the treatment because we still don't have the kind of accessibility that we need for hyperhidrosis. So thank you for doing this. And so we are working really hard to take care of our underserved community, which are the kids.
Yeah. So a lot of what I'm hearing is sort of a need for awareness and education for especially the clinician side, it sounds like.
Yep.
So how are you helping with that?
Great question. Thank you so much for asking it. So we were founded in 2003. By 2004, we had a code because hyperhidrosis wasn't even defined in the ICD at that time.
Yeah.
Right. So there was no diagnosis code, no treatment codes. It was basically, we all thought it was rare. I thought it was rare when I started, but it's not rare at all. It's 5% of the population has hyperhidrosis.
It's an enormous amount of the population to be going through this, we don't really know process in the doctor's office.
Right. Yeah. So they, so then in 2004, by then we had enough of a solid foundation, if you will, that we could then start our CME program. So
Okay.
since then, we have had, I think we're up to like 36 educational accredited full day sessions all around the world. So we've had
Wow.
them in Argentina, London, Spain, Greece, and then lots in the US. And now what we do, it's a full day, 7 CME credits, and folks come away having hands-on experience with the different treatment modules. We treat close to 30 patients in an afternoon and teaching all of the clinicians there hands-on. It's an amazing experience. And
Yeah.
honestly, we do it as much as we have funding, that's how we do it. If we don't have funding, obviously we can't do it.
Right.
So if we have support for our CME, and it's taught by, the top derms and my founders as well, the folks that are on my board. So my heroes are there with us teaching, and yeah, just it's an absolutely life-changing experience for
That
everyone.
is, yeah, that's a really exciting program. In these COVID times, how would somebody, a clinician, access this kind of program?
Right. So for the first time ever this year, we had it hybrid. So we had in
Okay.
person and virtual. And the other thing that was a first this year, which was super cool, is that we had we were invited by the Atlanta Association of Dermatology and Dermatologic Surgery. So they asked us to bring our class to their membership. So
Cool.
not only did we bring it to their membership, but we invited the world to attend, literally. So we had virtual people from all over the world attending, and then we had lots of, clinicians flying in from all over and we had over 75 people attend the session. And in this COVID time, like that was, to us, it was a really big deal. Now
Yeah.
that's in 2021. Last year in 2020, we had to skip the year because it was
Yeah.
really, we had,
Whoa.
right, in a word.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
my hope is that we will continue to have the hybrid.
Hmm.
I think that in person is just stunning because
Yeah.
we make the patient front and center. So one of the things that we do is that when we have the patient there getting treatment, I am in the room too, and I'm asking the patient, so how does this feel? And
Mhm.
do you feel informed, or is this painful? And later on, we will ask the patients, all of them, like those who are patient volunteers, like, what's your feedback
Mhm.
on your experience with these different clinicians? And we get the honest opinion and we give it back to them. And so I think that's a really important feedback loop that
Yeah.
clinicians don't often get.
Yeah. Oh, and the fact that it's happening in real time in this
Mhm.
session, I mean, that's such a
Yeah,
big deal. I mean,
yeah,
there's there's so much room for adjustment and for a clinician to really see this through the patient's eyes in that kind of setting, I would imagine.
exactly. Yep, we love that. Now, the other programs that we've done that are pretty cool is we had a series of podcasts. And so in our podcast, we have a number of families talking about how hyperhidrosis has impacted them as a family. So, mother, daughter, sorry about that, different families and married couples just talking about it. And 2 of these podcasts actually were accepted by the National Archives. So hyperhidrosis is in the Library of Congress National Archives, and we're so happy about that. We also have videos on our site too. Um, and then another one of our podcasts was the heart and soul of the International Hyperhidrosis Society, and that's a conversation between myself and Dr. Pariser and Dr. Glazer, my 2,
Mm-hmm.
U.S. compatriots that are so instrumental in the work that we do.
That is fantastic. I did have a chance to listen to a little bit of the podcast this morning when I was doing some research. So, Lisa, you've been talking about some pretty big accomplishments, and I know there's one other really big accomplishment that I'd really love to have you talk about. Can you talk about the work that you just recently accomplished with AT&T?
Oh, absolutely. This is a big deal. And I think this speaks to the way we at the Hyperhidrosis Society think about our work and our mission. We're really holistic. We look around at all of the people and in the room and we bring more in. So we don't only think about the innovators in that are working specifically in, hyperhidrosis. We work also with employers to recognize and bring forth hyperhidrosis in their employees. Now, we're only able to do this when we have an employee on the inside, and that's exactly what happened. So we had a very phenomenal advocate for hyperhidrosis who worked at AT&T, and she and I, she was my leader. I just followed whatever she told me to do, and we were actually able to get hyperhidrosis on the list of disabilities for AT&T, and that's worldwide. I worked with the folks in their HR department to help define the accommodations that would be a welcomed relief for someone with hyperhidrosis, whether it's the ability to have a fan on the desk to the extra, water breaks for folks who are out in the field. So basics, or the availability of having a place where they can change their clothes. And if they become too sweaty. And one of the goals that I had also was that they would include hyperhidrosis as a covered medical condition for their employees, and
I
also
love
have
that.
right, and also have the treatments covered too.
Oh,
So those are those are the giant goals, because employers can make that decision. They can say, we're going to cover this, and we're going to. So I brought it forth, and then we have the employees in there bringing it to the highest levels within the executives at the corporation, and we were able to do it for the hundreds of thousands of their employees. So that was a really big deal.
that has got to feel incredible because now you've done this with one of the biggest corporations in the world, and you've got this roadmap now that you've just kicked open the door for other organizations as well, for huge employers. I'm thinking like Amazon, Apple, all of
Right,
these places could absolutely benefit from this.
right.
I mean, I'm just so blown away. I'm really speechless that you were able to do that, and what an amazing thing to have done for your families.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hyperhidrosis is different because it has a functional impairment. So
Hmm.
it's not just looking at someone and they, you have all these. We did a survey once, and what do you think of someone if you see them sweating profusely? And it's like
Hmm.
all these negative
Yeah,
things, all
absolutely.
this stuff, like they're lying or they're insecure or they're out of shape or they're overweight. My gosh, like
Hmm.
all these things that are just that's what creates the stigma, right?
Hmm.
So, but there's also this functional impairment. So when my hands are really wet as an adult, I can't use touch screens. Kids can't
Oh,
use
right.
touch
Yeah.
screens, right? So, I try to, use the cash machine. It doesn't work. I try to dial, 911 on my phone during an emergency, and I can't get my phone to work. Could you imagine that
No, I
not able
mean,
to right.
it's interrupting your daily life.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
life-threatening. So it's functional. There's such there, and it doesn't need to be this way. It doesn't. The cool thing about hyperhidrosis is that if you can just solve this and manage it, everything else is you're great.
Hmm.
The kids who have hyperhidrosis, this is usually the only thing they're dealing with.
Hmm.
Otherwise, they're perfectly healthy. There are
Right.
other, skin conditions that have lots of things like what are, immunosuppressants, and it's like really serious
There's
stuff.
mountains
They
of
have to deal with it.
comorbidities associated
Right.
with it. Hmm.
Exactly. But
Yeah.
here with sweating, if we can just, nip it in the bud early on, and some of the treatments are coming along. What we don't have, like I said, are treatments that are, um, really specific for kids.
Hmm.
Or, I mean, what mom or what dad wants to have off-label treatments? Like
No,
nobody
it's
wants that.
scary. It's
Right.
really scary. You don't want that.
So the International Hyperhidrosis Society would love to develop a PRO so that specifically for children, that can be used so that we can finally get some treatments that come forth for kids, um, and that are on label for children. So that's one of our 2022, moonshots, if you
Yeah.
will.
Well, that so beautifully segues into my next question, which is, that's like your immediate goal for the
Mhm.
immediate future. Where do you see the organization in, 5 to 10 years when it comes to research?
So one thing that we do and have done for many years in research, I have a bit of a research background, so
Oh,
in
great.
clinical, right? So
Yeah.
I love research. It's my favorite. I mean, it doesn't count if it can't be counted. So let me count the numbers.
Hmm.
So I what we always do is we help recruit patients. I also help with the protocol because sometimes drug companies, and I think this will resonate with a lot of the other patient organizations, will use clinicians as a proxy for patients,
Mm-hmm.
and they're not. Like they'll have the key opinion leaders are always MDs.
Hmm.
And sure, that's great,
Of
but
course.
right? So we have this, Venn diagram of all the sufferers, and then a few of them are patients, and a few of those actually see the clinicians that are the key opinion leaders. So there are a whole lot of opinions and a whole lot
Hmm.
of experiences and journeys that are not getting
I
counted and
am
not getting
like
used.
so
So our
jazzed
job
because
as
I
the
can see the
advocates is to
alignment of our
elevate
two
and bring that
organizations
in.
so clearly.
So
I
I
mean,
would
that's
see
exactly
us in the
the
future as
goal,
being
like, okay,
more
bring,
of a
like,
catalyst
we
for
have had
research. I think that
meetings
right
with our
now,
researchers where
the
patients have been in the
researchers are out
room
there
and
on
they've
their
asked a
own,
question
and
that
I
has
think,
shifted
like,
the
if they were
focus
to
of the
come
topic
to
and what they
us
were planning to
earlier
research.
and say, "What's
So
really
it
needed?
is
Where are the
like
gaps?" Gosh, we
immeasurably
would have
valuable to
a
have that patient
pipeline
voice in the
that
room. And
right, is
it's
I mean,
so, I
it's
mean, it's
robust
perfect
now,
timing.
but
This is
there
exactly what
are
PeDRA is
issues
also
with the
focusing
treatments
on.
getting
So
developed that
so
could
excited to have
easily
you on
be addressed
board.
if they just asked us, if they just
Mhm.
included us in the development of it.
Mhm.
So that's where
Boy.
I'd like us to be. I mean, even just in the way you ask a question. So, folks who do surveys all the time, or, my goodness, you should have seen how many times when we went back and forth when we did our pediatric study, because
Mhm.
the researchers that do this all the time were asking questions in a way that our community would misunderstand what they
Yes.
were asking.
Right. Yeah.
And they, things like they would ask questions of like, does hyperhidrosis impact your clothing choices? Well, if you have axillary hyperhidrosis, which is sweating in the underarms, sure. But if you
Mhm.
have craniofacial hyperhidrosis, where you're just sweating on your face, you won't.
Yeah.
So, but they didn't know that if
Right.
somebody right, they're just looking at the final answer, and they'll say, "Huh, well, it doesn't really impact very many people, does it?" I'm like,
Mhm.
well, it
Yeah.
depends on the subgroup that you're asking. So
Right. It's really important to ask the right question.
mhm. Yeah, right,
Yeah.
right, and know your audience, and those of us in the patient I mean, most of us are lifers. I mean,
Yeah.
there aren't very many, executive directors that are there for just a short time. We just seem to keep on working at
Yeah.
it until we retire, it seems.
Yeah. How mission-based work goes. You just
Right.
can't leave it, it's in your heart.
It is.
Yeah.
It's in our DNA. It's in it. With,
Exactly.
speaking of, that's another thing we love. There was, some very interesting genetic work done in
Yeah.
hyperhidrosis, and I'd love to be able to pick that up and do it again. It ran out of funding, and
Mhm.
it would be great to halfway through they had to stop, and we helped recruit for that, and we were able to get
Mhm.
hundreds of patients to participate. That's that's a definitely a sweet spot for us because it
Yeah.
aligns with our mission in getting patient recruitment. So if anybody out there wants to talk to patients or
Yeah.
yeah.
That would be great. I mean, I was watching this video this morning of this young woman who has hyperhidrosis on her hands and her feet, and she was talking about knowing that it's genetic. and how that's affecting her decision in having children.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that's just not a decision that most of us are faced with every day.
Mhm.
And it's heartbreaking to think that there are so many people that are thinking that, particularly with this disease.
Yeah.
So I see your work as just this, like you're focused now on getting treatments for pediatrics, and then there's this the continuum with the genetics and
Mhm.
doing work in that space so that when these children grow up and also want to become parents, they don't have to think about that anymore.
Right. Because they'll have viable treatments, or they'll
Exactly.
be easily diagnosed and correctly diagnosed,
Yes.
right? All of this, it's like it's like defining the condition so that we can appropriately treat it. And as
Mhm.
long as we as long as the drug companies kept on just looking at 18 and older, they were missing
Mhm.
that the fact that it starts young.
Mhm.
And so even that was a miss in the
Mhm.
diagnosis of it, right? It's a
Yeah.
basic, and the fact that it's genetic. I know it always breaks my heart when women are saying, "I'm not sure I want to have kids," but it tells you how impactful the condition is.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to highlight that. I mean, we hear a lot
Mhm.
about the stigma and the burden of these conditions when we're talking about kids in the ped space and not wanting to go to school. And that's important because we're a pediatric organization with PeDRA, but there's also that thing where you're deciding as an adult whether or not to have children. And it's not because I don't want to be a parent. It's because I want to be a parent, but I want to be a parent so badly. I don't want my child to have to suffer the way I did. And
Mhm.
that is a heartbreaking conversation to have with yourself and your partner.
Mhm. Yep. And the partners almost always know. That's another thing that's
Yeah.
so, uh, hyperhidrosis is really hard to hide.
Hmm.
Um, and folks will do it. They'll hide it forever and ever, and,
Yeah.
but it eventually, when they find the right person that they can trust with this information, I mean, how crazy is it?
Yeah.
It's like excessive sweating, and it's
Right.
like, it's like, but it's a because it has such a negative connotation,
Hmm.
that the burden is exponential.
Hmm.
Incredible.
It
It's
is
incredible.
incredible. It really is.
And there are other diseases with such stigma, and I almost feel like I should start a foundation of stigmatized conditions,
Yeah.
because I feel
Yeah.
like there should be almost like a formula. Okay, how do we destigmatize this?
Right.
So maybe if I can figure it out, if I can figure out the recipe, I'll be sharing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do. Absolutely. Okay. So, Lisa, before I close, can you talk to us about Awareness Month and any activities that you want to call attention to for our viewers?
You bet. Okay. So November is Hyperhidrosis Awareness Month, and we love it. And the reason why we love it is because even choosing November as Hyperhidrosis Awareness Month has a purpose.
Ah,
So yes, it tells people who may not know. I'm always looking for layering meaning. So one of the meanings here is it's November, it's cold, so, and we're international. So you have the northern hemisphere, a southern hemisphere, and everyone is having a seasonal change. So
mm-hmm,
we're bringing to the forefront the fact that hyperhidrosis occurs year round,
mm-hmm,
and people who, no matter what the temperature, they're sweating profusely. And when we survey our community of sufferers, we ask them, what season's the worst? And when we were writing the survey, we thought for sure that, guessing was going to be summer, but no,
right.
summer and winter are equally bad, because
Okay.
in the winter, when it's cold out, you're freezing. Your feet are sweating, your underarms are sweating, it's dripping down your sides. You wear layers. Well, you have to peel off a whole bunch of layers and then peel on a whole bunch of new dry ones.
Oh,
Your hands are freezing in your gloves. And so that's why it's November, to bring that up. Now, what are some of the fun things?
yes.
So we have partnered with folks like you, sister organizations like you, to amplify the voice. So when you're doing something, miraculous, like having, talking with me and then talking with some patients in the future, and other organizations like MedPage and Medscape are also doing some work. as well as bringing it up. And everyone's doing social media and we're amplifying each other. So in that way, we're trying to create a critical mass. The next thing that we're building on is that we have 3 quizzes. Every Monday, we issue a quiz. The first one was, how much do you know sweat and hyperhidrosis? So basics, how many sweat glands are in the body? And, we have 10 questions there. Really fun. And it's fascinating what the average score is and which one everybody's getting wrong. And then the second one that we just released this, a couple of days yesterday is specifically on hyperhidrosis treatments and diagnosis.
Okay.
Really interesting there too. So, and then the one next week will be about the International Hyperhidrosis Society, just a real quick one, just for fun and make it easy. Then we'll have an Ask Me Anything with one of the treatments. So we have a live Ask Me Anything on the 18th with PeDRA. People have a lot of questions about it.
Great.
So, yep. So that's super fun. And then we'll have an opinion poll. It's just so much. We loaded it up, maybe a little too much.
Yeah.
And then we end the month on Giving Tuesday. So we're hoping that when we wrap it up on Giving Tuesday, that folks will feel inspired to donate to us so that we can continue to do this work in 22.
Oh, I love it. It's great. It's so awesome that you have so many activities happening. And I love how you're able to make them interactive, even though it's virtual.
Right.
So that's really exciting.
And we're learning so much from the quizzes. I mean, I'm
cool.
learning where are the gaps, and then the people who supported our month will get a report on where are the gaps, so they can help us, and maybe they will also amend some of their treatment or some of their messaging about their brands.
Love it. What a great idea. I see that layered thinking in you. Very cool.
Thank you, Jen.
Well, thank you so much, Lisa, for sitting down with me for Community Spotlight. It has been a delight to highlight the International Hyperhidrosis Society. I am so proud to be a partner with your organization, and I cannot wait for the future.
Same here. Thank you so much. We consider you guys sisters, and we're going to do some really amazing work.
I think so
we can
too.
work together. Yes,
absolutely. Thanks so much to Lisa Pieretti and the International Hyperhidrosis Society for participating in this month's Community Spotlight. November is Hyperhidrosis Awareness Month, so be sure to go to their website, sweathelp.org, for more information about activities and how you can get involved with the organization. You can find more Community Spotlight content on PeDRA's Community Spotlight YouTube channel. And you can also check us out in the PeDRA app, available for iPhone and Android users. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time.